Hey there guys, so we're out in the lovely evening air in Wales at the moment. I brought you out here. I'm out on my walk with the dog at the moment, and I wanted to do this whilst I was out with the dog. I'm currently stood on a bridge. Don't worry, I don't plan on jumping. I did, however, once I realised what I am about to tell you happened. So during my conversation with Miss Kimberley Isherwood, which you'll be able to listen to in its entirety right after I say this, there were some audio issues which I did not realize had happened until afterwards in the editing process, okay? So what was happening is I didn't realize that there was some static coming back through the microphone from about the 42-minute mark onwards, thereabouts, and then every 30 seconds or so at certain points you will now notice noticeable dips in quality because I had to rely on the lapel microphones in order for it not to have this horrendous static going through your ears. So my apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. I did not realize this until afterwards. You'll notice that I actually caught one of the audio mishaps because there was a time that my microphone actually stopped transmitting about an hour into the interview. So I've done the best that I can. The rest of the audio is crisp and clean and mwah. It's just these couple of instances which I hope don't detract away from the interview too much. But enjoy, listen well. There's a lot of things in here, especially if you're a parent in Wales, you need to be made aware of. So thank you very much for watching, listening, for all your feedback and everything, guys. I always appreciate it. Enjoy my conversation with Kimberley Isherwood, and I will see you on the other side. Enjoy. Godspeed.
Public Child Protection Wales does exactly what it says on the tin. We are the public protecting the children in Wales. Back in 2013, I saw an article online claiming that Spain were teaching 4-year-olds about masturbation. I found documents from the World Health Organization that wanted children masturbating. January 2020, the headline was sex education from age 3 with no parental opt-out. My stomach just dropped. Alfred Kinsey claimed to have studied the male population of America for homosexuality. He did not research the population of America. It was paedophiles and rapists. The youngest child is 2 months old. So that is the actual guidance, the World Health Organization guidance that was used, and this is a quote, in decision-making, human rights, bodily rights, children's rights,
Not
and guess
parental
what?
right, not parental rights.
Sexual and reproductive rights.
For children.
Our children are born with sexual and reproductive rights. Now, we did add this to our petition in the Welsh Government. The Welsh Government actually removed it from the petition and they replaced it with a pro-abortion website. Actually stood up in a conference and lied. She used a child who had taken her own life. She used this child's name to support this stuff and said, we need this education because this young girl took her own life because of her sexuality. A young girl took her own life because she was sexually assaulted in school. We need to look out for these behaviours. It is a non-verbal disclosure. That piece of lesson content has now become something that we call a barrier to disclosure. We're all in the same storm, we're just in different boats. If you're brave and stand up, they're not going to take you out.
Right. Hey there guys, welcome back to Voice of the Valleys with your host, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. Got a very interesting guest on the podcast for you today, Miss Kim Isherwood, and she is the chair of, I'm going to get this right now, Public Child Protection Wales?
Yes.
I often get the acronyms a little bit confused, but you might have seen her, for example, talking with Lawrence Fox, talking with the Heritage Party, if you had a look at on YouTube, very vocal on what's going on in the schools within Wales, particularly with regards to gender ideology, trans ideology, the sexualization of children, really, really evil things that are going on. That's going to dominate a lot of the conversation today. I'm going to hand you over to Kim now so she can give you a little bit of an introduction to herself. Kim, how are you doing today?
I'm okay, thank you, George. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So, as you said, my name's Kim. I'm chair of Public Child Protection Wales. Public Child Protection Wales does exactly what it says on the tin. We are the public protecting the children in Wales. So it's a grassroots organisation made up of people who were strangers to each other just 5 years ago. We formed the organisation after we started campaigning against the Welsh Government's new sex education. The reason why we set up the organisation was because this was going to be no ordinary campaign. We needed to stay around for good. There are teachers out there who need adequate training, parents who need educating, and somebody had to step up and take responsibility. So that's what Public Child Protection Wales is doing. We are stepping up and taking responsibility for the children, not just in Wales, but the rest of the UK as well.
Awesome. So, right. So you mentioned that you were in opposition to the Welsh government's new sexual education, if you will. And I believe you've called it global sex education. I believe is a term you've used for it, because a lot of this then goes back to the, World Health Organization, United Nations, that are pushing, seems, a lot of really suspect, to say the least, education, quote unquote, on children. So what kind of things did you notice that was going on specifically that initially caused you to raise alarm bells and initially caused you to all sort of realize that you had to come and oppose this? What sort of things were you noticing initially, or was everybody noticing?
Well, I'm a criminologist, so I specialise in child sex abuse. And back in 2013, I saw an article online claiming that Spain were teaching 4-year-olds about masturbation. So I wanted to look into this stuff to see if it was real. I was told that this was just propaganda. I went looking. I found documents from the World Health Organization that wanted children masturbating. So I was a little naive back then. This is the World Health Organization. They must be right. But I wanted the evidence for that. You have to have evidence. How are they coming up with these things? And that's when we discovered the work then of Dr. Alfred, Kinsey, John Money, and so on. So I was already aware of this education before it even came to Wales. It was an article online, Wales Online, January 2020. The headline was, sex education from age 3 with no parental opt-out. My stomach just dropped. I went straight to the Welsh Government website, looked at their RSE code, and on page 4, they were referencing UNESCO. So UNESCO is United Nations, who are partnered with the World Health Organization. You don't need to take my word for this. When you open the UNESCO document, it tells you who they're partnered with. So I, again, naive, I thought that Kirsty Williams had made a mistake. You've made a mistake here now. I like everyone else, we're a devolved nation. Our education is for the Welsh children. This must be a mistake. And it wasn't long before I realised it was not a mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing and why they were doing it. So I know there's a lot of uproar right now with this sex education for 3-year-olds in Wales. But what people need to realise is the whole of the UK adopted this in March 2017. The whole of the UK used the World Health Organization guidance for decision making. So that was politicians, health officials, education officials, and this education's been brought in with the view for legislative changes. And that's what you're seeing now, is a legislative change here in Wales. The lessons have already started rolling out across the UK. They're teaching 4-year-olds masturbation in England, in 2018. So we're all in the same storm. We're just in different boats. So it wasn't for us. It wasn't a case of what we seen or what we witnessed. It was a preventative campaign for us. So it was always about prevention, stopping this come in. Now, as you know, 5 years on, we are now in a state of damage limitation. So it wasn't anything that I saw. It wasn't anything experienced. It was knowledge. If I didn't have that background knowledge, and I heard that they were bringing in a sex education which was safe for children, I'd be at the front campaigning for it. Because I understand the importance of sexual safeguarding. It's what I do. It's what I'm passionate about. All of my work is based on perpetrator narratives from the perpetrator perspective, So for me to be sat here campaigning against a sex education, that is something I never thought I would do. But obviously I've got to do it because I'm duty bound, because this is not an education. This is an agenda. And there is nothing healthy and hot about this.
So you said it's all bound up in queer theory and stuff like that. The queer, I believe you used the term queering of binaries and stuff like that. And I suppose we'll get into all of that in a little bit as well when we talk about like Kinsey and money in particular. Really, really sad stories, really, really evil stories with these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already gone and looked at stories like the Reimer twins, Alfred Kinsey, with his book, The Sexual Behaviours or Sexual Behaviours
of the Human Male, yeah.
Where I believe it's table 40-something or table 30-something.
I got the book there. This is chapter 5. So chapter 5 is the chapter on adolescent males, and the children within this chapter, the youngest child is 2 months old. So we do actually have that chapter in PDF on our website if people want to access that. They don't have to go to the book. But the story with this book is Alfred Kinsey claimed to have studied the male population of America for homosexuality. He did not research the population of America. It was paedophiles and rapists. And, you know, there's a documentary out there now, Secret History, Kinsey's Paedophiles, where the people who work with Alfred Kinsey are on that documentary, and they will tell you themselves what they did with the research, how they keep the research, and, they think it's just a joke.
Truly, truly evil man. And John Money as well, which we'll get onto when we talk about gender ideology and stuff like that. But I just want to grab your attention to this at the moment, because this was something you shared. I believe this is something from one of your presentations here. Pardon the very poor printing quality, as my printer was running out of ink, and for some reason was taking ages to do it. Is this from like an official textbook, is it?
So that is the actual guidance, the World Health Organization guidance that was used, and this is a quote, in decision making. So that was the guidance they actually used in the UK, in all 4 countries, for them to adopt comprehensive sexuality education. That's why that guidance is really important. So from that point where they all adopted this, the academics in each country, I think it was Professor Donaldson for Scotland, he also did some work here in Wales as well, and Professor Emma Reynolds then took on this task of this sex education to pretend that it's for the UK. So that's where the rebranding came in from CSE, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, because that's what that is, down to RSE. So it's a rebrand, it is. But that what you have there in your hands, that is the actual guidance they use for decision making. Now, when you go to our academics reports, so Professor Emma Reynolds, for example, you will see that she's using the definition of sexuality from the World Health Organization. So it's all there, it's all, there's no secret. They are referencing this stuff. And we've even got correspondence back and forth with Kirsty Williams, where she admits this is co-constructed by UNESCO. So that's the original guidance there. That's where it all started for me in 2013. And
Kirsty Williams is the ex-education minister.
Former education minister, yeah.
So just to give you an insight, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who might not be watching or just listening, whatever, the page I have in my hand at the moment, I've got several which we're going to be going over, because there's a lot of things in here which I think if you understood, if you don't already understand it, if you understood these were being taught to your kids, you might have a lot of problems. So when we're talking about sexuality for 0 to 4-year-olds, so instantly you might already have alarm bells. If you hear the term sexuality and 0 to 4-year-olds in the same sentence without any kind of condemnation, already going to set alarm bells off. But some of the guidance that they've been given, ladies and gentlemen, I'll read out a couple of bullet points for you now. Enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, early childhood masturbation, discovery of one's own body and genitals, fact that enjoyment of physical closeness is a normal part of everyone's life, tenderness and physical closeness as an expression of love and affection, gain awareness of gender identity, talk about unpleasurable feelings in one's own body, express own needs, wishes and boundaries, for example, in the context of quote-unquote playing doctor, a positive attitude towards one's body with all its functions, positive body image, and respect for others. Normally, at least it was the case when I was in school, I believe from some of the dates you gave, I believe this really started coming into force around 2017. So I had literally just left comprehensive school by this point. So I luckily seem to have just missed like when it was coming in force. A lot of the things there, normally you think of 0 to 4-year-olds, what are you normally thinking of? Like hopscotch, and or at least it was when I was, I don't know what the kids are doing nowadays, probably making TikToks and stuff like that. But they're bringing this in for 0 to 4-year-olds. And there's another one here, for example, ladies and gentlemen, 6 to 9-year-olds when we're talking about sexuality, and it's going about sex in the media, which you think, unless it's going to be like somebody talking about sex in the media as a drive to try and corrupt you, take your innocence, and completely, devastate your life. But obviously, no, this is not where it's coming from. Dealing with sex in the media, acceptance of others' needs for privacy. And this is the stuff that's coming through public schools.
So that's the matrix in the World Health Organization document. I think it starts from page 32. That's on our website as well. But what you've read there is, if you actually look along the top, the headings, the information fed into the child, the skills the child will acquire, and then the last box is the attitude they'll develop from that,
Yep.
So it's quite telling you do not need a trained eye for this stuff. And that's why we will not let our document go. We found the documentation proving the study was done in England to be applied to the whole of the UK. This document was an overview of 25 countries, and it tells you on page 8, they use that document for decision making. It tells you.
Truly, abhorrent stuff. And I think all you got to do half the time is make parents aware that this is what's going into their kids' heads, and they'll have that natural reaction. If they don't, it's very, very concerning in and of itself. We mentioned some of the key figures here. We've just gone over Kinsey a little bit, where, again, in that book we mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, sexual behaviours of the human male. The table in there categorises the number of orgasms young males can have. And I believe he wrote one on females as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I believe he wrote one on females as well. All the way down to, I believe you said the youngest was two months
old. 2 months old.
Documenting like the number of orgasms young males can have in, like, I believe it's the span of an hour.
And so their definition, it was under a stopwatch, it was. So it was, it tells you how many hours they were done. So this is in a 24-hour period in all.
Why do you need to know that? That's my question.
Well, even when you read their definition of an orgasm, the children were kicking out, they were crying, they were screaming. There was abundance of tears. And they claim that's an orgasm. That sounds like torture to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that, because initially I became aware of Kinsey's work from Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman? I'm not sure if you would have seen it. Where he mentioned the table, but didn't seem to go in any details out. So talking these kids is not just a case of they were abused in this way, but this is getting into torturous kind of treatment here, and just makes you wonder why. And this is, for those of you who are not aware, ladies and gentlemen, of how deep this rot runs in academia or stuff like that, Alfred Kinsey is still revered to this day in academia. I believe it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not sure if you've seen, one of the universities in America unveiled a statue.
Yeah, the University of India, Indonesia, or Indiana?
Indiana might have been, yeah. But yeah, they very recently, I believe it was I don't know if it was a bronze statue or whatever, but they recently unveiled a statue of him outside of a prominent American educational facility. So we're talking about the rot in academia and the rot going into your children's heads through the school system. The people who are governing and bringing this stuff in, they love this man. They revere this man. That's the kind of evil we're talking about. And they also, as you would have heard before mentioned as well earlier on this episode, love another man by the name of John Money.
Yes.
Don't they? Who is the pioneer behind gender ideology and the whole idea that you can raise a child as long as you quote unquote catch it early enough. You can raise them as the other sex or other gender. They're not going to know any different, because gender as a social construct is completely fluid. Do you want to give a little bit of insight into who John Money was and the kind of stuff that he was doing and how it spawned his research and what it's led to?
Yeah, so as you said, Dr. John Money believed that gender was a social construct. There was 2 young boys, David Reimer and Bruce. Yeah, Bruce. So twin boys, they had circumcision when they were very small. One of them was botched, pretty much mutilated his genitalia. And they ended up in Dr. John Money's office. They didn't plan to go there, but they were seeking help. They ended up there. John Money said to David's mother, "Don't worry, there's nothing to worry about. We can raise him as a girl. We change her name to Brenda, put her in dresses, force her to play with girls' toys." There was also sexual assaults here as well. So Dr. John Money used to have the 2 children in his office without the parents present, and he would force the children to perform sex acts on each other, where David, who was Brenda then, had to take on the role of the female. By the time David realised, he always knew he was different. I know he didn't like dolls. He didn't like dresses. You know, he wasn't into any of that. And he always knew he was different. But they did actually tell him the truth. And he wanted a detransition back. By this time, it was too late. Because Dr. Money had published his research as an absolute success. Again, this is not a myth. If you just Google David Reimer interview, David Reimer told the world before he died. Him and his mother, they went on national TV, chat shows. They told the world the truth. So he didn't just take this torture and abuse to the grave. He told the world the truth, you know, and the world was not listening. Mm-hmm. And because the world didn't listen, now our children are faced with genderbread men and gender unicorns in school. Again, this is totally unethical. It's based off the back of child abuse. The raw data is child abuse, child mutilation, child sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. This is what we're actually dealing with right here, right now. And you did just say about Kinsey being hailed a hero, and I just want to flip back to that slightly if we can.
Of course. 3
of us are RSE accredited teacher trainers, and I can tell you with certainty, they use Alfred Kinsey's scale to teach about sexuality to the RSE teachers, who then take it into the classrooms. So this stuff, even though people say, oh, it was back then, it was historic, this stuff is still being referenced, is still being used, and it's very much to the current time. And we can tell you that from first-hand experience, from being trained to become RSE trainers. We know this stuff is active, you know. It's not historical. It's not historical. It's just found its way into the current day.
You mentioned there, I'm glad you touched on that as well, because you mentioned that you're not just speaking from somebody who's on the outside looking in, but can actually see this stuff. You've actually gone in and become like RSE trained to really understand what's coming in. Obviously, that's where this has come from, ladies and gentlemen. So, you're hearing this, obviously, seems as though you've gone in on the inside. I don't want to say like a double agent or something like that, but to really get the truth of the matter, which is a very, very courageous thing to do. And I can speak to that from personal experience as well, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may know is that in one of my job roles, it is based on an educational campus in Wales, and I can speak to myself. This ideology is rife. This ideology is rife within it. Not a comprehensive or primary school establishment that I'm on. But you mentioned something about Kinsey's scale, the Kinsey sexuality scale. What is the scale, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's basically the scale is, if you're, so there's heterosexuality, right? So there's
heteronormative or something like that, is it?
Or whatever they want to call it. So heterosexuals there. And anything away from that is part homosexual or queer or, you know? So that's the scale. The further away you come from 0.0, if you map anywhere other than 0.0, you are on this Kinsey scale. You have a sexuality.
So they tried to make it into like a continuum there.
Yes, almost. A continuum. They call it the Kinsey continuum, yes.
So rather than it being like as we used to think about it, I suppose, where it's like you were just completely gay or completely straight or maybe, bisexuals, whatever, that sort of go in between or whatever. Now they've made it into like, it's just this completely vapid, it's almost like a piece of graph paper almost, and you could be anywhere on this, in this complex plane, to seemingly deliberately confuse children. That's the thing that I think we talked about. This is designed to deliberately confuse children. So it's not like when we're talking about queer theory and stuff like that, queering the binaries, all of this stuff. I believe that mainly comes back to Michel Foucault. Yes. So, who's, again, one of these very, how do you put it, charitably, for, one of these not very good people as well, Lejo. One of these not very good people as well, to say the least.
Allegedly, he had an interest in animals as well as the sexual side of things with humans.
I believe, at least he used to take young boys into graveyards and do the horrible things to them. I think I heard that in the Jordan B. Peterson interview once, so don't quote me on that, ladies and gentlemen. Don't quote me on that specifically. but it's designed to deliberately confuse children. So,
well, if you just let's look at the letters. LGBTQ plus A, right? Q plus IA. Right? You're going into a school, you're teaching children about the LGBTQ platform, right? You're teaching about different sexualities. If you're speaking to 7-year-olds, those 7-year-olds already identify as asexual. Everyone in that classroom has a letter assigned to them. So already, as young as he's done, they're not going to feel sexual towards anyone. But even not feeling sexual towards anyone has already given them a letter. So they are part of the LGBTQIA.
Already labelled them as part of the cult.
So they've already drawn them in on that front anyway, you know? So children, as far as they're concerned, you fit in one of these categories and you're part of the LGBTQ movement. It's as simple as that. They've trapped the children from the first lesson.
Just, I called schools, you know, radically left-wing indoctrination camps, seemingly for good reason by the sounds of it. And again, it just gets back to the wider point, really, that I talked about with somebody who was an ex-school teacher, is that it seems as though, maybe you could speak to this, that the schools now, whereas when times are maybe more traditional, okay, you can have critiques of how society used to be and stuff like that, perfectly valid critiques, stuff like that, but at least there was an understanding, you know, from in local parentis and all of these things, that the school was almost like an extension of the parents, and there was this understanding between the school and the family that the child was the responsibility. I don't like to use the term property, but like, you know, they were of the family first, and then they came to school to learn an education. Yes, for that time period, because you know for whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, we've gone into a society now that has basically made it so that both parents have to work in many instances. So you can't do things like homeschooling, or many instances you can't do private school or anything like that due to cost and stuff like that. I think a lot of that though, as society has changed in its values and stuff like that, which I think is another conversation. But now it seems as though the school, rather than being an extension of the parent and actually taking care of these kids, being like almost taking that, no, we're your caregivers now, we're your parents now. The government has sort of come in and said, no, your parents are somebody not to be trusted. They want to cause that divide between the parents and the child. Is that what you've noticed from doing this work?
Absolutely. What I'm also noticing is as well, I feel as if teachers are being trained that parents are a problem. And that's on any front, you know, even looking at the safeguarding policies. So sexual abuse safeguarding policies for professionals in this country. They are told to familiarise themselves with the culture of the families. They're not told to look in the establishments or anybody in the staff room. It's all towards families. You know, families are the problem. And we've also got as well academics out there, Dr. Ellie Brams, speaking in teachers' conferences, telling teachers, don't send a letter home for this stuff. You don't want 30 parents knocking at your door. So they are being told not to engage. They're being told how to bring this stuff in without having conversations with parents. So for me, I'm a mother of an additional needs child. I've always believed in three-way partnership. Parent, child, school. It works beautifully, right? When you've got that three-way partnership, so the school would inform me as he's coming home if something's happened. I would inform the school before he got to school if something had happened. It was always a seamless thing there. Now the doors are locked. You can't get into the school. They'll say this is for safety or whatever else. Okay, we'll accept that. But you need an appointment to go to the school. You're not allowed in your child's class anymore. It's like as if the parents are completely knocked out of it, you know, and they know this. So when they were bringing in the RSE and the Welsh government now, they did this draft, this RSE draft to make it look as if it was from Wales. They did some studies in schools across Wales. And one of the studies was in a school in Betos, where they had parents coming in the evenings to do different lessons, different activities. Now, attendance was very poor to begin with. Not many parents turned up. But as the weeks went on, that room was full. Parents were coming in every week. the child's attendance in general in school was improving. So the government already know this. When you are engaged with parents, the door is open to parents and you're building this partnership, everything improves. They know it. They've got it there in their own paperwork, but that's not what they're actually doing in reality. They'll do that study just to put in a report, but they don't put it into practice. So I feel as if the parents are completely shut out. And if you look at the teachers in general now anyway, they are in charge of deciding if your child has additional needs. They don't even have a medical degree. They are the ones that decide if there's a safeguarding issue at home, and they are the ones that report it to social services. Everything is at the teacher got to be the social worker. They've got to be the nurse. They've got to be the gynecologist. They've got to be the counsellor now. They've got to be the therapist. What happens to teachers being able to teach? So there has been a shift. Things that should have been happening at home are now being influenced at school. There's far too much power there for somebody who's not really educated. Let's be honest here. You got these teachers that may or may not have done a PCGE, but you've got somebody there who might be a bit of an expert in geography, somebody who's a bit of an expert in history. These people don't know social services. They don't know special needs, additional needs. Where they don't have these qualifications to back up the amount of responsibility they carry. So this weight of responsibility is unfairly placed onto the shoulders of teachers as well, But I do feel that there is there's no provisions in place to promote a relationship or a partnership with home to school,
Yeah, I think that's where societal attitudes have changed as well, where it seems that parents nowadays, in some instances, I don't want to group all parents in with the same sort of group, but a lot of them nowadays, whether it's because they're stressed from work, they're stressed because family life isn't good, whatever it might be, they want to pawn their kids off on different things, whether it's phones, whether it's video games. Like my mum, Rufina, she was very stringent with me with video games. She was very strict, and I think in many instances now, looking back on it, a lot of the things I was very critical for my mother for being, I'm actually very grateful for in many instances. You mentioned, or one thing I wanted to ask is with this divide between parents and the school, where when you had this whole thing where parents, child, or in some instances, obviously you only have one parent, so it could be either, but parent, child, and then the school, this system seemed to work really well. Now it isn't working so well. Do you think that's by design?
Definitely by design, 100%. Yeah. Like I said, you can't even go into the school anymore, into your child's class. And we've saw this as well. This has been recent in the special needs schools. Children who can't walk and talk, usually their parents are, they got like good one-to-ones with the teachers. All of a sudden now they can't even drive their cars into the yards. It's all very, it isn't home to home anymore. It's very regimented. There's no heart in it then. It's all very cold.
And what I've been seeing as well, it just seems that kids are just getting worse and worse and worse, you know what I mean?
Well, let's look at that environment. Let's look at these 21st century schools. They are big, massive, grey or purple buildings. They look like prisons. I go past my old comprehensive school every now and again. I think, Jesus Christ, this looks more like a prison than I thought it did. It looks like something out of I can't remember the name of the film or whatever it is. It has this big yard fence outside with like the vertical posts and like the one cross beam going across about 9/10 of the way up. And the old building, it really does look like some kind of like prison infirmary from like the 50s, you know what I mean? But you mentioned exactly nowadays, seems that schools, even modern schools nowadays, they just look so bland and they look like just more updated versions of those. Yeah.
Another thing you mentioned is that it's quite an interesting dilemma that I've seen, because you look at a lot of teachers, for example, out in America, and when they're being in a tough position, I think in Wales, I think we can give a little bit of a fairer crack of the whip to people with regards to their morals and stuff like that. But we see it in America, in places like that, for example, the teachers are also keen to talk to the children about like, oh, I'm this made up gender construct, whatever it is, or these are my pronouns and all this stuff, or this is, my partner and me do this and it's normal. How much of in Wales, from what you understand, do you think that it's teachers being put in a tough position and actually wanting to do good, realizing it's wrong, and then you have this other set that actually see this as a good thing? Do we have is it all on one side in Wales, or is it?
Right. Well, what we do know is we know that 68% of teachers don't like teaching any form of sex education for a start.
Okay.
Right?
Reassuring.
So what we're seeing is a lot of teachers are retiring.
Mm-hmm.
They're being replaced with these new teachers. There's one school down in Cwmbran Way, and it's the back of beyond. You know, it's one road in and one road out. A very small Welsh school. They put a head teacher there, and if you look at his CV, he should be running some academy in America. And I'm like, hang on, you've got all of these qualifications, and you've been brought in from I don't know where. What are you doing in this little village school? But they are bringing this stuff in. You know, these teachers, they're armed with this stuff. So another example I can give you is I'm on all the teachers' groups on Facebook, right? I don't say anything. The one time I did, I got kicked off. But you need to be in there to know what's going on. So there's a teacher in Wales called Mrs. House, and Mrs. House is posting her stuff onto social media from the lessons. And she's got children writing things like, Mrs. House says life's too short for boring sex. We had another one and another incident with a new head teacher had come into school. And instead of introducing himself, he did a PowerPoint presentation in the assembly. Instead of introducing himself and his teaching background, the schools he's worked at, he was showing pictures of his husband and their adopted child. Now, when I was in school, I would say, Miss, are you married? And I would be told, mind your business. You know, you only knew if a member of staff was married if they were going as Miss or Mrs.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know nothing about their private lives. I had one teacher in school who was an auntie of some of the children there. They wouldn't even have, like, it was professional.
Yeah, they understood.
It was like, yeah, that's Mrs. Bevan's an auntie. It was like that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's not... but they're going in now, they tell them about their personal life, their sex life, and it's too much, it's too far. Anyone with a moral compass or anyone who's been in that industry a long time knows it's inappropriate. It's wholly inappropriate to be speaking to children about your sex life.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask what was the age group? Do you know the age group she was teaching, this person?
This is House. No, I have no idea. Oh, I think actually this was a comp. She did say it was comprehensive school, yeah. She's actually on 2 groups, Mrs. House says. So
we're talking, what, 10 to 15-year-olds? That sort of age, yeah, 10 to 15.
11 to 15, yeah.
11 to 15-year-olds. So yeah, just wholly inappropriate.
What it is, they're all on groups together. They're all getting confidence from each other. They think this stuff is great. So let's take Mrs. House, for example. There's one group she posts on anonymously, but in this other group, she's got the confidence to post as herself. You know, so it's quite telling what's going on. They are getting confidence from each other. And
scary.
And these teachers, look, they believe they're safeguard trained, right? They got no criminological training at all. And when they're trying to say this stuff doesn't safeguard, well, who am I to come along and tell you this stuff doesn't safeguard when you're safeguard trained? They're going to listen to the person bringing the document down from above. You know, so there's no... what's the word I'm looking for? There's no leeway at all. It's like, I'm trained to do what I need to do. I know what I'm doing. Who are you lot? You know nothing. This is policy. This is safeguarding. And it seems like a cult. It seems like a cult. That's the first time I've ever used that word when I'm speaking about the teachers in this sense. But it is a form of a cult. Yeah. Because you do get strength in numbers. You do get confidence in numbers. And that's what's going on here. You know, it's coming through, well, Dr. Ellie Barnes giving conferences. It's in teacher training. It's in their additional training when you got people coming in from outside. You know, it's...
And those ones that really want to bring it on, like you got the teachers that are, as you said, what was it, about 68%?
68%
that don't want to teach.
Teacher.
Which is understandable, really, because I think if you ask them, would they be comfortable because odds are they're either a mother or a father, if they're a teacher, would they be comfortable with anybody other than themselves talking to their kid about sex? You'd probably say no. any kind of,
We
for
do.
the most
There
part.
are some head teachers out there who have pulled parents aside and congratulated parents for challenging them. Because they've said, we've got children in school too, and we're doing exactly the same.
Wow.
We've got some head teachers there who, when we take exemption letters in, they are ripping them out of the parents' hands.
Exemption letters, is that for like the
So
lessons
from
and
the
stuff like that?
RSE, yeah, you know, because the head teachers don't know anything. They don't know nothing about the legislation. They don't really know where this education's come from. And when we are told, I've asked my teacher said, I'm not being funny, but you name me one time in history teachers knew about a policy before it came in. Name me one time in history that teachers have been involved in the legislative process. Teachers in the classroom.
Yeah, and a lot of times they probably just be told to shut up and get on with it. You know what I mean?
You know, teachers don't realise that this new legislation the government has brought in has put the responsibility onto the head teacher. So now we're in a situation where we've already got a broken down relationship with the teachers and the parents because of the way they've set the system up. But the way they've set the legislation up is we've got no choice anyway but to take out the teacher. So what's happened here is there's animosity between the home and the school.
By taking out the teacher, I'm assuming, just for those of you listening, you don't mean...
No.
I was going to say, yeah.
We're taking out the teacher, we're going to make an example of him, we will have a teacher in court.
Yeah.
That's what we mean. We don't
mean in the Mafia mob sense, ladies and gentlemen.
No. I don't get any pleasure out of saying we're going after your job. You know, not in current climate. We all got bills to pay. But unfortunately, we have to go after an individual. We will go after them. We will take their job. We will drag them through the courts. But this is how the government set it up. I apologise in advance. This is what we have to do on behalf of our children.
I do think, sadly, a lot of them, they probably... I don't want to say a lot of them, but there are a certain subset of them, as we've seen, they relish in people on the other side losing their jobs and stuff like that. So there's that kind of thing where, like, one side is, like, doing it because this is something we have to do because it's a moral imperative. And, you know, if there's a little bit of... I don't know if I want to call it collateral damage, or if somebody has to lose it, if somebody has to lose their job, it's like, what's more important? You keeping your job and children being, for lack of a better term, groomed in this way, or you having to, you know, lose a job in order for these things to happen. Ultimately, it's like people don't appreciate how the magnitude of certain things before it happens to them themselves. Like I talk about issues that are going on in England, issues that are going on all around the world, in America, and I try to talk to people, but they're like, oh yeah, but it's not happening here, so what are you going on about it for? But I'd be like, by the time it gets here, it's too late. Yeah. Especially when I think I said it on a podcast recently, just one of the solo ones I've done, is that in many ways we're quite lucky. We have the opportunity to be proactive about this stuff. If you learn, for example, ladies and gentlemen, this is another sheet I've got here for learning objectives 5 to 8 years old. It says, key idea, people can show love for other people through touching and intimacy. At 5 years old, I don't think people should be worried about, you know, love for other people through touching and intimacy. Usually you tell a kid, keep your hands to yourself. Yes. At least that's what it was when I was a kid, for example. But they're teaching, I believe this is from one of your other slides as well. This is from,
that's
again,
from the UNESCO document.
The educational materials directly.
Yeah, so what we have the World Health Organization document. That was the first one you read. That was used for decision making. And then the UNESCO document, which I call his younger, funkier cousin, is more... easier on the island. So this is what we're being told to use in the UK.
And they always dress it up in nice language. They try to dress it up.
So this is the younger, funkier cousin, and it's beefed up rights. Okay, so this is human rights, bodily rights, children's rights.
Not parental rights.
Sexual and reproductive rights.
For children.
Our children are born with sexual and reproductive rights. And if you look at the World Health Organization, part of these sexual and reproductive rights mean you can consent to voluntary, exciting sex. That's part of your sexual and reproductive rights.
As a child?
Well, you're born with them. Now, we did add this to our petition in the Welsh Government. The Welsh Government actually removed it from the petition and they replaced it with a pro-abortion website. That is one thing the Welsh Government did not want anyone to know, was our babies have sexual rights. That's one thing they do not want anyone knowing. But that's what the UNESCO document there is all about. It's a rights-based approach. So we got three theories: sexual from birth, gender ideology, queer theory, and then we got the sexual rights. It's a rights-based approach.
but no parental rights.
No parental rights at all.
No parental rights. So no right to... That was one thing I do want to go back to a bit quick before I read some of the stuff that's out on this document, ladies and gentlemen, to show you how they try to dress it up and make it sound nice. Mention that when people bring exemption letters into school and the head teachers basically rip them out of their hands, I'm assuming they do that with excitement, like
Yes.
when they realise what's going on. What is because we know now that there is no parental opt-out for these kinds of things. Through 3 to 16, there's no parental opt-out whatsoever. I believe that was... I think in the podcast extract I sent you, I think it was Lynne, it might have been Lynne Neagle, or it might have been somebody different making that point. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Lynne Neagle's the current education minister, if I'm not mistaken.
Lynne Neagle's been in this since the beginning, so she was actually chairing the Children and Young People's Education Committee when this was coming in. Lynne Neagle actually stood up in a conference and lied. She used a child who had taken her own life. She used this child's name to support this stuff and said, we need this education because this young girl took her own life because of her sexuality. A young girl took her own life because she was sexually assaulted in school. So Lynne Neagle has been in this since day one. I did a fantastic video on Lynne Neagle on YouTube, and within 10 hours it was removed for legal reasons.
So one of these...
Lynne Neagle's been in this since day
Is the
one.
case of that well known? Because I think...
Yes. What I will do is, as soon as we finish here, I will go to my emails and I will get a name for you.
I just want to see if it's one of the ones that I've known. Something flashed up in my mind. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but something just flashed up in my mind of a case where that happened. That's true. That's really
so she's
harrowing.
used a child's death, a child's suicide to promote this agenda, claiming that we needed this education because of that child's sexuality. That child was sexually assaulted.
And that's so similar to what we see as well, where whether it's a gender-affirming, quote-unquote, therapist or people who come from John Money's school of thought and stuff like that, they'll say to the parents, I've called it one of the most destructive lies I've ever been told, is like, do you want a living daughter or a dead son?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, to guilt the parents into going along with this. And then you end up with the Rima twins, as we talked about, ladies and gentlemen, who, for those who don't know, had the outcome of that. They're no longer with us. One of them died of a drug overdose and the other one committed suicide. So I forget which one is the one way, the right way around, you know, which one committed suicide, which one died of a drug overdose. But we mentioned here with the UNESCO document, ladies and gentlemen, about how they try to sort of, make it palatable, make it attractive, almost like they try to do it like, oh, you can eat the bugs and they taste really nice, they're a good source of protein or stuff like that. So from 5 to 8 years old, it says here, learners will be able to state that people show love and care for other people in different ways, including kissing, hugging, touching, and sometimes through sexual behaviours. We're talking 5 to 8 years old. 5 to 8 years old. Define good, and this is part of the key idea number 2. Children should understand what is and what is not appropriate touching. Now, when you were in school, odds are, when I was in school, we were told that pretty much all touching, aside from maybe a high five or handshake, was inappropriate touching. It says, define good touch and bad touch. Recognize there are some ways of touching children that are bad. Some ways, not always, mind you, when we're talking about sexual concepts here, not always. And demonstrate what to do if someone was touching them in a bad way, namely punch them in the face, most likely. But then again, you probably get done for a hate crime if you punch somebody in the face. But that's what we're getting on to. You've done a lot of work exposing the classroom materials and stuff like that. I'm assuming these are coming from UNESCO and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Classroom materials.
Yeah. So can I just touch on what you've read there? So define good touch, bad touch. This is a safeguarding thing, and I need all listeners to hear.
Of course.
A child cannot differentiate between a good touch, bad touch, because genitals are sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So they tickle. So when you say to a child, is that good? Does that feel nice? In that child's mind, that's good touch. A child cannot define the difference between good and bad touch. A child will only know that privates are private and anything beyond that is inappropriate. A child cannot define good and bad touch. So this is how they're getting away with it. They're telling parents, this is safeguarding. We're going to teach your child the difference between what's good and bad. No, they're teaching your child the difference between what feels good and what doesn't feel good.
And then trying to pass it off.
And most sex abuse does not hurt. But the only thing they're teaching about sex abuse in these documents is sexual violence. Sexual violence is rare in sex abuse. if child sex abuse was violent, we'd know about it far more than what we do.
Because as well, you could class like just the regular grooming as some kind of sexual abuse, couldn't you? At the very least, abuse of power and stuff like that.
This says if sexual abuse is defined in two ways: contact and non-contact. Non-contact abuse is talking about sexual stuff to a child. Non-contact sex abuse is showing them stuff. This is the definition of non-contact sex abuse. So why are the police not getting involved?
Yeah, so because a lot of things, for example, ladies and gentlemen, again, they try to dress it up. They're not as... This is the thing that scares me about the Welsh government, is they try to cover it up, or seemingly with the Welsh government in particular, the UK government, it's a bit like they try to pass off... In America, they're very open book about it. They call it diversity, equity, and inclusion, outright stating that it is, redistribution of this new social capital and this Marxist construct, right? The UK government tried to dress it up as diversity, equality, and inclusion. They tried to dress it up that little bit more, because you can get equality of outcome and equality of opportunity very easily conflated, but they're two diametrically opposite things. So the UK government in this instance is trying to deliberately conflate the two so that people don't understand what's going on. They do that with some of the educational materials, which we'll go into at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. This one, however, something that I want to just get your thoughts on it a bit quick. It's another one you shared. It's called All About Me.
Yeah.
Is this another one of the educational materials shown in schools? So
the All About Me package is being used in Wales as well. So I know it's being used in Barry local authority. The All About Me package, if you actually Google that piece of lesson content there, what you will find on Google is it was in 241 schools in England, children as young as 4. But what the papers tell you is it comes from Warwickshire Council. It does not come from Warwickshire Council. It's part of the UNESCO stuff. It's in different languages, so they will try to, these things will go viral, but they try to quickly shut them down. So for that, they said that's Warwickshire Council, it's being shut down, but that is All About Me package. It's being widely used around the UK. It's about kindness. It's about taking care of yourself, about keeping yourself clean. That's how they sell it off. But that is very much still being used across the UK. Now, people will say to you...
just as young as 4?
As young as 4, yeah. It does say age 6 to 10 in the package, but some of the classes were mixed, and that's how we know it got to the 4-year-olds.
Right.
So people will say they're not going to teach children about masturbation, right? And what you would have noticed is, from the World Health Organization document to the UNESCO document, they changed the terminology to self-stimulation. And that's what you have there in your hand.
Yep. So I'm going to read it out for you now, ladies and gentlemen. This is titled All About Me. It says, for your information, should you need it to remind the children of the rules about self-stimulation. There are also rules about there are also rules about touching yourself too. Now, lots of people like to tickle or stroke themselves as it might feel nice. They might play with their hair, again, seeing how they try to dress it up with other things that you just see as a lot more innocent. You see a child playing with their hair, nothing really too suspect about that. It's just what children do. I'm literally doing it all the time in this interview because my hair is getting on my nerves. It's not so much playing with it, it's because it's getting on my nerves. They stroke their skin, or they may even touch their private parts. This is really very normal. However, some people may get cross or say that it is dirty, especially when you touch your own privates. This is strange, as it is really very normal. However, it is not polite to do it when other people are about. It is something we should only do when we are alone, perhaps in the bath or shower or in bed, a bit like picking your nose. It is certainly not polite to do in class when everyone is watching. That is what was going into the heads of children as young as 4.
Can I give an explanation on that as well?
Yes, of course. Please do.
I can give, that is a massive safeguarding concern. I can give you a full criminological explanation. So we do have children who touch themselves. We have children who don't touch themselves, okay? We have children who are touching themselves because they've been abused. We have children touching themselves because they've got a medical issue. We have children just doing it because they do it, and some don't bother at all. What that piece has actually done now is drawn attention to everybody touching themselves. Now, when we're dealing with small children, we're not asking them to tell us they've been sexually assaulted. We are looking for something called a non-verbal disclosure. And sometimes that is in touching themselves, okay? We need to be able to watch these children behaving in this way so we can investigate. Is it innocent? Is it a medical issue? Is there something darker going on? Now, can you read the last sentence of that again, please?
Yes, of course. I'll go from about by here. It is something we should only do when we are alone, perhaps in the shower or in bed, a bit like picking your nose. It is certainly not polite to do in class when everyone is watching.
Right, and when they're in class, adults should be watching. Okay, you're safeguarding a child. So what we've now done is we haven't just told all the children they can touch themselves. So we've lost the children now who are being abused because they're all touching themselves anyway. We have now programmed every child away from a non-verbal disclosure they've been told not to do in the class. That is very dangerous. So from the moment a child goes into the class, they're being taught about their genitalia, as they claim is safeguarding. Again, I can prove that's not safeguarding. They're being told they can touch themselves. They're also being told not to do it in school. As safeguarders, we need to look out for these behaviours in children. And like I said, sometimes they can be innocent. Sometimes it can be a medical issue. We need to look out for these behaviours. It is a non-verbal disclosure. That piece of lesson content has now become something that we call a barrier to disclosure. There's no disclosure coming from it.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous.
Yes. What kind of signs typically would be displayed in terms of non-verbal disclosure that you would see, for example, with regards to like a child touching themselves? What ways would you see or typically would you see?
So it's not just touching themselves, it's touching other people as well.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a fine line between curiosity and these non-verbal disclosures, you know? And this is why we need to come down to a child's level. So for argument's sake, when a child says, oh, my brother licked my cookie, right? That child doesn't have to tell you where vagina was licked. We say, oh, what was the cookie? Oh, my uncle stroked my mouse. What's your mouse's name? Do you know what I mean? So we're looking for little things that they say which isn't a full-on disclosure. We're looking out for behaviours. They will act in a certain way. So for argument's sake, a child who has been abused a lot and passed around, when they meet adults, they might be very touchy of the adults, you know, and because that's all they know. Well, we need to look
potentially also very closed off.
Very closed off. They can be closed off, or they can be very often with the very small children. If it's been happening to them since when they know no different, if they know no different, there's no different to them coming and unbuttoning my shirt to it would be my son coming and giving me a clutch. Yeah. You know, so we need to look out for these behaviours. And you shouldn't be scared to offend an adult. You know, you shouldn't be scared to offend an adult. We need to look out for this stuff. We don't hide these behaviours. And if there has to be an investigation that becomes a negative investigation, brilliant. We've done our job, haven't we? We've done our job.
At least you're sure.
Yeah, you've done your job, you know? And this is the issue for me. This is the criminological aspect. There's no criminological safeguarding here. And to properly save a child from sex abuse, you need to understand the mind of a perpetrator. We use car criminals to put better security on our cars. We use burglars to put better security on our homes. We need the paedophiles to better protect our children. This stuff is all what paedophiles like. They like children talking confidently about their genitalia. They like children who touch themselves. They like children who think it tickles. Do you know what I mean? These are all a process of a groomer. And if people were adequately trained, this stuff wouldn't be coming into the classroom.
Exactly. And now it's right front and centre in the school system. I believe you said, is it 25% of the child's time in school is dominated by this stuff or thereabouts?
I have absolutely no idea on the percentage, but what I can tell you is it is now something called the whole school approach. So the whole school approach means it's got to be in every subject.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Mentioned it was in every subject.
Every subject.
I can't remember the percentage.
So it's no longer a standalone lesson, you know, and it's also been sold as health and well-being. So we've sat here talking about RSE. It's actually been packaged as health and well-being. That's the danger word you need to look out for, is the health and well-being.
And again, there you go. Always try to dress it up as something which you think, oh, they're teaching kids about health and well-being, you know, and you think that it's a It's a good thing when this is what's being built into their heads. Truly disgusting. When you see, for example, this is 2 images, which I believe was again part of a series of images which were in textbooks and stuff like that. Is it not?
So that's actually part of a video which was endorsed by the NSPCC. That came off the Scottish Government PowerPoint. So it was a YouTube video in the Scottish Government PowerPoint. And that's actually talking about females. So tying up a chicken there, that's talking about women with light bondage. The pancake with the cream, that's swallowing.
Yeah.
The Nutella and the banana, that's anal sex.
I'll put these images up for you guys to see on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, for you guys to see them in higher details. So, because they're obviously going to be very small here.
So, yeah. So, the Scottish Family Party took that to the Scottish Sun. And I think it was like, it didn't actually get to publication first time. It got kicked back. But then they did a survey on it. When they did a survey, I think it was 96% of the population said it was inappropriate. But the reason why the Scottish Government is getting away with it is because the Scottish parents have an opt-out, right? So there's been no vote on legislation, so it hasn't come up in debate, but these lesson plans are online anyway. So even though it hasn't been brought to the parents' attention, it's just being delivered. The parents don't even know.
And what ages are we talking about that might be seeing this sort of stuff here?
From that stuff would be comprehensive school.
Comprehensive school. And there's another one here, Joe. It's a picture of a banana being dipped into a jar of Nutella. Only 40% of women, and that's meant to symbolize anal sex. So,
and I think there's also the hot dog.
There's a hot dog as well. So if you imagine the hot dog bun sort of going this way, ladies and gentlemen, there's 2. You know, Frankfurters or whatever you want to call them going in endways, and that's meant to symbolize a threesome, is it not? Yeah. So yeah, this is, and again, I like you put on the slide here, it says safe and ethical.
Yeah.
Safe and ethical, to be told with comprehensive children about this. It just truly makes you sick to your stomach when you learn all of this stuff. And I just said on there, I don't know if the microphone picked it up, I was, glad I got the lapel mics on. For some reason the recording has stopped. Okay, right, we're back. So might have to just take over from the lapel mic, say, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. For some reason, the microphone decided it was going to stop, but we're back and cooking now. So I'm just going to quickly recap over, just in case the microphone did cut. It cut about a couple of minutes ago, I think. So I think we're all good. But yeah, we just talked about, ladies and gentlemen. So to get this across, again, to sort of hide and obfuscate the real reasons behind what's going on, the whole point of it, you have to be marketed towards comprehensive students. You have a picture of a tied up chicken, like you'd find in a supermarket, for example, with weight that's actually 40%, quite a lot. It's meant to symbolize bondage. Again, why are they talking to children about this, or minors about this? I've no idea. You have a picture of a hot dog bun with 2 sort of Frankfurters going in either end of it. That's meant to symbolize a threesome. You have a picture of a pancake with 2 strawberry eyes, what appears to be a raspberry nose, and apple slices for a mouth with a bit of whipped cream on the side of it. It says on the outside of the plate going around the side, 30% will swallow, and about 40% of women will like anal, apparently, and that's denoted by a banana that's being dipped in a jar of Nutella. So yeah, very, very classy stuff. Very, very classy stuff going on. And again, you've only got to go back through the history of what's going on, through the key figures like Foucault, John Money, Alfred Kinsey, to understand this whole thing was rotten from the very start. Where do you see this going in the future at the moment?
Well, this can either go one of 2 ways. We either stand up and put a stop to it, or we're about to experience the death of innocence. This is the death of innocence. If you look at their work, Professor Emma Reynolds, she will write in her papers, childhood is a myth.
I'm glad you brought her up. I wanted to talk about this.
Innocence is a myth.
So you mentioned she's in Cardiff University?
Cardiff University, yeah. So childhood and innocence is a myth. They don't believe in childhood. And this will be the death of innocence. So just imagine a world with no innocence. That's not a world I want to be in. That's not a world for any child.
Absolutely, especially when just as a wider thing, not even with regards to child sexual abuse and grooming. If you don't have a world with innocence, obviously everybody's guilty of something. That's like something that happens in North Korea, and so that's the kind of government you have in North Korea. And when you mentioned that the government, it seems at the moment, is obviously not taking this lying down. They're not just going to come in and be like, oh yeah, you guys were right. This is absolutely abhorrent. Because, and you mentioned there with Lynne Neagle, for example, they are like ardent acolytes.
They're actively lying. They're actively, knowingly lying to bring this stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got to lie to bring something in, and you've got to hide the lesson contents from parents, I don't think there's any more to say on that. I think that in itself tells us all we need to know.
Absolutely. And I don't think people realise that. I love the Ronald Reagan quote where he says, "Nothing more terrifying than somebody turning up to your house and saying, 'I'm from the government, I'm here to help.'"
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love that quote. Because this what's going on now. They've made it explicitly clear. Government have made it explicitly clear, like has happened in any totalitarian regime throughout history, whether it's the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, whether it's the Soviet system, whether it is Mao's China. I think this is more akin to what was going on in Mao's China, where, again, these kids in schools don't know any better. They obviously don't know how to differentiate this stuff. And many instances, the parents don't know either. That's why it's important for you guys. It's a bit like what Mao did, where he gave good identities as red, communist identities, and then bad identities as black, whether it's like shop owner or butcher or something like this. And the whole thing is designed to divide. Obviously, now everybody is divided along all these different lines, along all these identity lines, whether it's the whole, 72 million, whatever it is, different genders. Everybody's divided on that front. Everyone's now divided on even just the old class system, like we see. It's almost like another manifestation of bourgeoisie versus proletariat. And ultimately, what you really rounded off with in a lot of your speeches and stuff like that, when you talked about it, we aren't going to get out of this unless we realize what's going on and we all come together, unite the kingdom, so to speak. What do you see as the best route of doing that at the moment, with regards to obviously your activism, and what can, for parents that might be listening to this, for example, the other thing I was going to bring it back around to, which I wanted to earlier, with Wales not having a direct opt-out for these kinds of things, what things classify for exemption in schools, do you know, that parents might be concerned that no, I don't want my child learning this? Well,
there are exemptions. So there's a Section 41 and a Section 42 exemption. So the Section 41 exemption is down to the head teacher to disapply for 6 months. And if the head teacher's not willing to do that, a lot of head teachers don't understand this. They send it to local authority. But you can school the head teacher and politely say, actually, the Section 42 is for the local authority for children with additional needs. So you can use your Section 41 exemption, but it's far more powerful for your child to put in the exemption. Because we are a country of children's rights. We are a country of children's rights of law. So if a child wants to make themselves exempt, put it in.
Okay.
If you're coming across situations you're not happy with, or you believe your child has seen something inappropriate, take them to court. Because that's what the court wanted. The court wanted a damaged child. They wasn't interested in a case of prevention. They need to see harm. Well, let's take them to court. With regards to children, all children get legal aid. Think smart, guys. We've got these tools out there. So there are exemptions out there. There are exemptions in England as well. A lot of the teachers, they haven't read the legislation. The local authority doesn't understand about these exemptions. It's brand new. But they are there. They do exist. So in Wales, we are training people for advocacy, how to advocate for themselves. We've also written our own training package, the only criminological approach to safeguarding in the UK. We've written that. We've piloted that. We're just about turning to a qualification for the whole of the UK. We've got our fight here in Wales. We've set up our community hubs. We're just about to set up a curriculum watch committee because we're using the case law from the judicial review to fight the government because they've gone back on some arguments. From a UK perspective, we have a UK coalition of 17 parent groups. We have something in the pipeline there. We are about to revive a bill that a politician tried to put through a few years ago. It didn't go through. It's the Gender and Parental Rights Bill. So that's the UK front. On an international front, we've just joined an international coalition. We've just developed a Universal Declaration of Childhood, and we're going to Washington, D.C. to deliver this to the World Health Organization conference in September. So we are fighting on all three levels. We need people looking at social media. We need people who can write letters. We don't have to write letters. We've got the templates for you. This is a mission to educate and empower individuals, We have to keep going back over old ground. We have to remember this is a UK fight. We have to remember it's a global issue, So it's very much, I can't tell people, right, to do X, Y, Z. All I can say is, where you at? What are you prepared to do? And we've got provisions and avenues in place for anyone, regardless where they're at, Like we got the public meetings taking place as well on Zoom, which we're going to get guest speakers on. It's just a mission of trying to educate, and we just strike when the iron's hot, That's exactly where we are. If I had the answers for you, if I had the solutions, we wouldn't be doing this podcast now. We would have been dealt with,
Very, very true. We mentioned as well about, obviously, the biggest, I think, that's going to be for the most people at the moment is things like education and stuff like that, where you've got your own qualification, and even things just like this, where we can talk about, the actual realities of things and what's going on. I've always found that even when you just try to make people aware of the history, they're often, they'll either go one of two ways. They'll either be like absolutely repulsed and then want to dig in further, and then they'll actually start coming around to what you're saying, or they'll, be repulsed by what you're saying, call you all the names, and then dig their hand in the sand a little bit further. That's what they'll tend to do. Are you hopeful at all for Wales next year with the potential next government coming in and stuff like that? Are you hopeful at all for next year?
We have proven the democratic process doesn't exist. We've proven the judicial process doesn't exist. All that's happening right now is political ping pong with our children. I can say as well, every single political party out there, even the new circus has come into town, they did nothing to inform the rest of the UK they lost their parental rights. They haven't answered the phone to us for 5 years.
Who's the new circus, if you don't mind me asking?
It's Reform the new circus is, isn't it? This was Labour in Wales, it was Conservative in England, it was SNP in Scotland, and I don't think they had a government in Ireland. I've engaged in all political platforms. I've spoken at all different conferences except for Conservative and Labour Party. They've done nothing for us. The only political party out there who has supported us without us knowing was the Heritage Party. So what you're going to see now, ladies and gentlemen, is you're going to be seeing political ping pong with our children. People are going to promise you the earth, and they're not going to deliver a Mars bar. So this is why we are setting up the Curriculum Watch Committee, because after the election next year, 2 days after the election, when all these people go away, you never see them again, we are going to be there.
Yeah, like
we'll still be here. We're going to use this election to get out there campaigning like we did the last election. It's a perfect excuse to knock doors. Our eggs don't go in any political basket. Nobody at the top has ever changed anything at the top, ever. Right? When a new government comes in, they never undo the stuff from the time before. But people at the bottom, when people at the bottom rise, we have 100% success rate. That's the eggs. That's the basket my eggs are going in. My eggs are going in the basket with the people. They are not going anywhere near politics. I've got no faith in the political system at all. I've engaged with I've been part of the Labour Party. I've been a member of Brexit, then Reform. I've been in these meetings with these people, okay? I'm not reading newspaper articles. I'm not listening to podcasts. I'm sat in the meetings.
Yeah.
I'm in the conferences. I know how these people behave towards their candidates. I know which ones are not answering the phones. So as far as the political spectrum goes in the election next year, as far as I'm going to say, let's enjoy the exercise. Let's get out there campaigning and informing people about our children. And then as soon as the election's over, let's go back to work the following day. Yeah? That's the way I view it.
What would you say to people? We mentioned it at the start. It's more of a tangent to what's going on now. I mentioned that in my constituency, for example, especially, seemingly very politically apathetic and ignorant of the kind of things and what's going on and how it affects them. I'd be surprised if, you know, people who vote for certain parties, you ask them, did they read about what they're actually going to do? They probably say no. They probably just read the cliff notes, like the bullet points, and they don't actually vote on policy, so to speak. For those who are like politically apathetic, and I've been there, feeling very disillusioned with the system, as you mentioned, feeling that, well, the system's clearly not there for me. It's not there for the Welsh person or for the British person. It's not there for the benefit of them. So what's the point? I think another thing to bear in mind as well, ladies and gentlemen, is that the one strength that we do have just as regular people is strength in numbers.
Yeah.
So that, you know, you look at however many Senate members we got or however many MPs we've got, there's a lot more of just regular people, regular angry people, than there are Senate and members of Parliament. So do bear that in mind when you think that all of this stuff is just down and out and we have no recourse whatsoever. Just say to people that are feeling that little bit of just like, oh, what's the point?
I feel like that quite often. You know, what's the point? The point is, this is children. That's the point. That's the difference. And that's why I can't say, you deserve everything that's coming. I can't do that because this is about children. And when you think, what's the point? And then you remember it's the children, that's the point. That's the point. The children. We've had our childhood. We've had our adolescence. I'm 42 now. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what your childhood was like. It doesn't matter if your childhood was good or bad. It's gone, right? Let's do something different for the children that's coming. Childhood is a small window of your life, and it's going to shape your entire life, you know? Damaged children become damaged adults, and that's something we need to prevent. That's something we need to protect. Absolutely. So what's the point? Children.
I think they're going to be your future then MPs. They're going to be your future
leaders,
brain surgeons. They're going to be your future, you know, in just, you know, relatively menial jobs. You're going to be the kind of person that's whatever role you go into. I say we want, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, I was one of the people that when I was young didn't want any thought of having kids. All of this stuff never going to happen. All of this stuff. Every child says that at some point, right? But then you start getting older, and then you start understanding, you know, a little bit more about morality, and that, you know, it's not just you, so to speak, in your own little individualistic bubble. There are other things going on that not only affect you. It's a bit like, I can't understand why some people are politically apathetic now, even if you're disillusioned with the system, because if you don't care about politics certainly cares about you.
Yeah, of course.
For example, and it has massive effects on you. So at least now you're going to be that little bit more well-informed going into these things, and more well-informed about these issues that go outside of politics. Again, we're talking about, in many instances, like there was a charity. Charities are a big problem at the moment. I'm not sure if you've had any involvement with them. You mentioned the NSPCC, for example, which is so ideologically captured. There's many, many others like Stonewall, and make no mistake, these have massive influences on your child's education as well. That's why they're pushing it so hard. And this links directly back to the Welsh government. It's like the Welsh government is like the heart, the big don of this Mafia family within Wales, and obviously it goes higher than them as well.
Yeah.
But they go through these charities, which tell me how a charity can be government funded, for one, and still remain a charity. But the last thing I wanted to get onto, talking about these charities, and Mermaids, for example, was another one that was sending out breast binders to young girls behind parents' backs. So there are people actively trying to groom your children into this. So you need to be aware of it, not only aware of politics, but aware of the wider situation of what's going on as well. Have you had any involvement with these charities and stuff like that? Any conflict with these charities?
Yeah, all the
time.
Like so I ask them to prove their resources. Where did you get this from? Can you prove the safeguards? So Brooke Cymru with their traffic light system, I've challenged them. Where's the evidence to back this traffic light system? Their response is they've taken it from Brooke in Australia with 55 years experience, and they've spoken to young people. Then it's the correct terminology, teaching children correct terminology for their body parts. I have challenged the NSPCC. It took me 4 years to get 2 studies off them, which were surveys of sexual prevention programs in New South Wales and Australia. So, yes, I am. They don't like me. Women's Aid, again, I've challenged them. I've asked them, why have you written this on the RSE consultation? What did you actually look at to come up with this conclusion? They've ignored us. We've actually invited Women's Aid to come and have some training. We've offered to train them. No reply. Children's Commissioner, The Children's Commissioner, Sally Holland, she was a Children's Commissioner for 5 years when we did a survey on her. Nobody in the country knew who she was. 87% of people didn't know who she was. 12% who thought they knew who she was thought it was Kirsty Williams. So she's just barking her. The new Children's Commissioner, I've emailed her. She's taken the stance of the Children's Commissioner before. She said, I support the work of the Children's Commissioner before. So this is not even somebody who stands in our own, who stands for herself, So, but when you look into these people and these places, like for argument's sake, Sally Holland, the Children's Commissioner, she came from Scotland, never stepped foot in a housing estate in Wales, went straight to Cardiff Uni and then Children's Commissioner, NSPCC, like I said, took me 4 years to get this research from. I had to take like 3 different approaches. In the end, I was bombarding them on social media, their sponsored posts. Again, these places are unregulated, completely unregulated. NSPCC is promoting Professor Emma Reynolds' stuff, agenda, so we have challenged these people, but we're not going to continue challenging them because we're going to replace them.
Okay.
That's why we set up Public Child Protection Wales. We are becoming the change we want to see.
Ah, good.
They mean nothing to us. They mean absolutely nothing to us. We're replacing them.
So, but like people say, practice what you preach, but in this instance now, you're preaching what you practice.
Yes.
It's a little bit different. You're not just going out on the pulpit and saying these kinds of things. It's a little bit like that. You said, no, we're not going necessarily just toe to toe with them and trying to do all of this stuff, trying to fight them, so to speak. Well, no, we're just gonna replace them.
Any person from any academic institute in the UK or even around the world, anybody running any of these charities, Stonewall, NSPCC, Brook Cymru or Brook whatever, I will go live on TV and debate any member of staff they've got. That's how certain I am their stuff is pure filth. That's how certain I am I'm backed with evidence. And that's why we're replacing them. We will replace them.
No, I think, again, it's kind of in that point at the moment where societally as well, it's starting to turn. Like the momentum is starting to shift. For the last 5 years, I don't know what it is about the last 5 years, but all of this like lunacy, as we mentioned, has just gone skyrocketed up. Like ever since COVID, I think COVID woke a lot of people up as well, the things that were going on in COVID as well. But in the last 5 years, just massively skyrocketed. But now people are realizing the absurdities that it's going to. And now they're slowly realizing, no, this stuff that we previously took as gospel, so to speak, not only wasn't all it cracked up to be, but it was actively damaging people as part of this. Again, you get called a conspiracy theorist for saying it, but wider, sinister agendas that are at play with regards to the United Nations and the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum, the you will own nothing and be happy types. But then the last thing that I wanted to get onto, or just before, rather, her name has come up a couple of times, rather. We've mentioned big figures in this movement, for example, like Alfred, Kinsey, John Money, Michelle Foucault, those kinds of people. But there's one that seems to be a prominent purveyor of this ideology based in Cardiff Uni. I'm right to say it's Emma Reynolds. I'm right to saying that one.
Professor Emma Reynolds.
Emma Reynolds. Who is this person? What was she espousing? And what influence does she have, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, she's supposed to be a professor in childhood development. Professor Emma Reynolds is so confident in her work that when it was exposed, she came off social media and hasn't returned. So Professor Emma Reynolds is the lady, she's a queer theorist. So she references a lot of work of Judith Butler. In her papers, she got things like adult plus child equals okay. She doesn't believe in childhood. She believes innocence is a myth. She's targeting our special needs schools for these studies. So a lot of her research has come from special needs schools. And Professor Emma Reynolds is the named person who chaired the Relationship and Sexuality Education Committee for the development of the new RSE in Wales, which is a cover-up of comprehensive sexuality education. So she's the pimp.
She's the pimp, basically.
She's the pimp, yeah. She's the pimp.
And is also a big, quote-unquote, academic researcher involved in this field as well, that's actively trying to pump this stuff. And again, you think that all of these academics and stuff we talked about, ladies and gentlemen, that, they're based out in America, you know, all of this stuff, or they're based in foreign countries, whatever. No, this person's based in Cardiff.
Yeah.
This person's based in, many of you who live local to me, this person is based in, 40 minutes down the road from where you live, and is having this massive effect, or seemingly at least, until she was seemingly booted off of social media, or removed herself anyway.
Yeah, she's removed herself. She's very gutless. She's a coward. We probably will never see her. I'm a criminologist, and obviously my work's on child sex abuse. I don't want to make any aspersions, but I don't think many of these people have experienced a childhood themselves. You can just tell by the way they talk. A lot of them I feel are trapped, but that's just my own personal opinion. That's my own criminological profiling. I'm concerned. I'm concerned.
I think some of them, you almost feel sorry for them in a way, because again, it harks back to a particular point in the conversation where we mentioned, I think it was when we were talking about like the touching in schools and stuff like that, but like the non-verbal cues. And it's a little bit like where, a person that is a bully is often bullied themselves. Yeah. And then when you realise that, you can't help but almost feel sorry for the person. Do you think there's quite a bit of that is that to sort of get these people around, these ardent acolytes of the movement, not to sort of much kill them with kindness, but to like understand that they may be coming from this thing as well. They're not, if you want to say it's like some evil spirit that's sort of like taking hold of them, that's making them espouse all of this stuff that's harming children. But do you think that's going to be a better way of getting them round? Or do you think we can get those people round even? No. You don't think we can?
No.
Think they're too far?
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they are doing. So all we can do is pray for them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all we can do. When you've got the likes of Professor Emma Reynolds, who's got a massive control over our education, she's got a lot of clout in this country. If you put me and Emma Reynolds together in a street face to face, I'm a street kid, homeless on and off from 14 to 21. She doesn't come up to my ankles. She does not come up to my ankles. And let's remember now, when somebody's called a professor, it's not like something that they've earned. It's something that's been awarded to them for a groundbreaking piece of work. And her groundbreaking work is the queer theory. You don't go from being a childhood development into queer theory. Those bridges do not cross unless they're intentionally there to cross, These people, if you take them from behind their screens, if you take their letters from after their name, they are nothing. They are nobody. They are part of the human disgrace.
The nice distinction you made there when you were talking about your three principles, I believe it was, that childhood ends at 18, the distinction mark between being a minor,
Everyone under 18 is a minor, yeah.
And I can't remember if that's number 2, but I forget one of the others, but you mentioned that you're either part of the human race or part of the human disgrace.
So we say, everyone, where does your moral compass lie? The age of consent is different in every country, but I don't care. We're not discussing sex with a 17-year-old. We're not discussing sex with a 16-year-old. In our eyes, everyone under 18 is a minor. The Sexual Offences Act covers everyone up to the age of 18 with consent as well. There's 2 splits in society, adulthood and childhood, and there's 2 types of people. You're either part of the human race or the human disgrace. It's as simple as that. That's our 3 principles, and that's how we get through.
There we are. So again, and we are getting to that point, I think. It really boils down to when you're speaking in absolutes, like, for example, where you say you're either part of the human race or human disgrace, whatever you want to put it, like it's us or them kind of thing, or you're either with us or against us. This is almost like wartime talk. Almost.
It is.
But in many instances, you can argue that the government has already declared war on parents and stuff like that, for example.
On our children, they've declared war on our children. And the children's first line of defence is their parents.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they tried to separate and get that wedge in this case, through the public school system. Speaking of, because they are the first line of defence, what advice would you have for parents that they might have, heard all this now, or they might have just done a little bit of research themselves, but it's a bit like I had when I first started seeing how deep in this shit that we are, for lack of a better term. You feel helpless. You feel like you're trapped at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and there's no way up. You're never going to get out of it. What advice would you have for just people, concerned about their kids, basically?
the first thing you need to do is you need to learn a little bit. You don't have to learn it all. You just need to know something. The people you're dealing with, the teachers, now they haven't got a clue anyway. So it's about familiarising yourself with something that matters to you, something that's easy to understand, or get in touch and we'll work on something you can understand. It's about knowing you can become your own advocate as well as your child's advocate. We can empower you on that front as well. There are template letters on our website you can use as exemptions. We do training. We would love to come to everyone's community to help you train, to help you understand from a criminological perspective how to sexually safeguard your child. You subscribe to our website, publicchildprotectionwales.org. Attend as many meetings as you can. It's about getting organised. What we are encouraging people to do is start a coffee morning. It doesn't matter if it's just you and your friend. You know, if you're in the same cafe, the same time every week, people are going to get used to seeing you. But there was only 5 of us outside the centre at one point, you know. Now we've got thousands of people on Facebook. We're on most of the alternative media outlets out there. We're very well respected. You have to start somewhere. It's very messy because we spun out in a web. That's why you choose one thing. Choose one thing and you focus on that. If you don't know where to choose or what to pick at or where to go, let's have a chat. Let's just have a chat. I can't tell people you do X, Y, Z because I don't know where you are in your journey. I don't know what you need to learn. I don't know, you know. And for some people, it's just simple as, oh, this is a good thing they can do, actually. When you're told this is age and developmental appropriate, ask them for the assessment tool. Ask them for the assessment tool they use to define if this is appropriate or not, because we have proven this assessment tool does not exist. So when they can't prove if this is developmentally or age appropriate, you're dealing with the Health and Safety at Work Act then. What we are focused on is cases. We want as many court cases as possible. We want brave people. We're not expecting you to go and hire a solicitor. We are the solicitors. We don't use solicitors, only a barrister. So this is about coming together. It's education is key, knowledge is power, and unity is going to win the day.
Absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of people are scared as well, is that I think on 2 fronts, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be willing to do it, obviously. That's why I'm trying to get the message out there now, from getting it from people like yourself, is that you're going to receive pushback as well. You're going to receive a lot of pushback, and you need to be prepared for pushback. It's going to lead us into one last bit before we round this out for today, because I know I think he wants to go home. But they're going to receive pushback at 2 fronts. Odds are you're going to receive a little bit of pushback in your social circles, because there will be people in your social circles that have uptaken this either knowingly or unknowingly. So they're either going along with it simply because they believe it's true, they believe it's the status quo. They're not going to necessarily call you a bigot or all of these things because you have reservations about it. But at the very least, they're going to maybe, quiz you on it. They're going to at least ask you about it. These might be the people that they might be a little bit more open to being convinced. But you're going to have people also, potentially within your friend group, that are ardent believers in this. They have like pronouns in their bio, they have the trans flag and all of this stuff. They'll fly the Pride Progress flag and go to all the events and stuff like that. This could be your best friends, could be within your family. And if you even so much as question any little thing about this, they're going to go down all the standard attack lines, almost like a member of Antifa. Almost like a member of Antifa would. So, you're going to get all the labels. You're going to get socially ostracized. They're going to say, don't come near me, don't associate with me. They're going to try and guilt trip you into all of this stuff. They will, because they are the ones that have been taken in by this cult, and they're the ardent acolytes of it. They may be able to be brought out of it, obviously, because they're not necessarily the cult leaders at the top, but there are going to be people that are going to turn on you for this in your communities. People sadly have been taken up by this. And the other one then is the government. The government as well, because you mentioned before you've had instances where the government will obviously use public funds. They'll never use like the coffers out of their own 72k a year wages, whatever it is. They'll use public funds to go after said public and then try and bankrupt you.
Yes.
I believe you mentioned that they tried to take litigation against you for, I believe it was about 50,000.
Yeah, so this was the second court case we had against them, and they wanted £50,000 off us by a certain date. And because we hadn't paid them, they want a list of our assets.
Yeah, so then they'll go after your assets as well. So not only, ladies and gentlemen, the government in this instance will use the money that you're forcibly obligated or you go to prison to give them, you're forcibly obligated to give them to prosecute and to go after people to try and bankrupt them. They won't use they won't use their own money coming from their own, exorbitant salaries every single year. They won't use those. They'll use the funds which you have been forced to give them to go after your fellow people, the fellow people within your communities that are voicing valid concerns about this. And then we'll try to bankrupt them or we'll go after their assets. But you said they wanted to take your furniture and all stuff like that.
I don't own property, so it wouldn't be my furniture. They want a list of everything.
So make no mistake, Jeb, they will come for you, but ultimately, and this is where I get pushed back even from my own family.
They try to come for you, right? They try to come for you. If you're brave and stand up, they're not going to take you out. They're not going to take you out, There's lots of examples of this, but that would mean I go off on a tangent. But when you are brave, trust me, they will try to pick on you in the beginning, but you stick to it. We got one parent who sees lesson content now, nobody else does. That parent, the school's petrified of her. The government's petrified of me. The councils are petrified of me. So even though they will come after you for certain things, there's certain things they won't touch you as well.
They'll try and throw everything at you, ladies and gentlemen. But again, it's like Teddy Roosevelt, where he got shot in the chest. And proceeded to still give his speech before he went to the hospital, and the bullet still got lodged in his chest and never got removed. That kind of, almost for lack of a better term, brass bollocks we need. Face, I hope you don't mind me saying, you got bigger than a lot of people, if you don't mind me saying, Kim, for the work that you've done. Hope you don't mind me saying that. But as I said, we've been over a lot of things now. We'll start running out. I know you've mentioned the sort of work you've done, the outlets you have. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you? publicchildprotectionwales.org. We're on YouTube, PCP Wales. We're mostly active on Facebook, Public Child Protection Wales. We are on X, but we're not very technical, so I'm trying my best there. But the best place is through the website. There we are. So Public Child Protection Wales, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that'll do it pretty much for today. Kim, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. As always, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, good night, wherever you are. And we will catch up with you again very soon. Godspeed. Hey there guys, so apologies about the lighting on this video. This is later on in the same evening that I recorded that little preamble at the start about the audio issues, right? To make you guys aware of the audio issues that I was facing. Now I'm just in the middle of heading back home and it's just absolutely started pissing down. So I'm not going to waste any time. Only thing I want to ask you guys about, what was before a lovely summer evening in Wales, is if you're a parent that whose child is in public school, especially if you're in a low socioeconomic area like mine, where both parents are working, it's very paycheck to paycheck, people don't really have a lot of opportunity to educate their children now, other than the public school system, okay? If you've had these battles with the public school system, parents listening to this may be very concerned now and not know where to turn. Give them some advice in the comments. Give them some things which you may have done, some things which you said to the school, some things which you've done, ways you've gotten involved, other things which maybe you can do outside in the home. Give these people that may not know where to turn and what to do, some things to act on. Now I'm gonna get my ass, my very now wet ass, on home now as soon as possible. You guys have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. And thank you very much for watching. Hwyl fawr, we'll see you next time. Godspeed. Why, thank you.